Good morning. Good morning. How is everybody doing today? It's good to see everybody here. Lesson for me. I'm just trying to fix my network here. It's a little bit slow. Hopefully, it picks up. Yes, it's a Sunday lesson. I don't usually do live lessons on Sunday, but since I didn't do one yesterday, I thought I would do one today. So I'm happy to be here with everyone. Hopefully, everyone is having a great day today. If you're watching this on Sunday, that's great. If you're watching this on the replay, welcome as well. That's also great. Hopefully, you can join me. Today, we are going to be doing a lesson on relative clauses. Relative clauses. All right, so I've had a request to do relative clauses before, kind of reduced relative clauses. What this lesson is going to focus on is how do we make sentences with relative clauses, and then do I not have to use the relative clause? When do I not have to use the relative pronoun? Now, as always, I will explain the lesson on the screen. Jacqueline, morning. How are you? I'm well. How are you doing? How are you doing? It's good to see you. I haven't seen you for a while, so I'm glad you. As always, I'll put the lesson on screen, and I will do that now. And don't worry if you don't know what a relative clause is. Don't worry, I will explain that very shortly once I get the screen onto the screen. Okay, so I got the link on the screen now. You can see it's titled Relative Clauses as Objects. But before we get into the relative clauses, I do want to go over some pronunciation. I want to give you guys a little trick of how native English speakers pronounce words, how we link words together. All right, so let's go over that right now. This will help your pronunciation. This will help you sound more fluent. What do we do here? It says right here, right in the middle of the screen, I'm highlighting it. It says linking consonants to vowels, linking a consonant to a vowel. All right. So a consonant is any letter. Obviously, that's not a vowel. Vowels are A, E, I, O, U. So the rest of the letters are consonants. So sometimes we will link these together. And let's show you an example here. Let's get my pen out. Let's get this ready. Let's look right here. Now, I want to look at the phrasal verb. We've been doing a lot of phrasal verbs recently in my live lessons. Today is not a phrasal verb lesson, but it shows us how we can link different words. So I'm going to write turn off like this. Obviously, we write it normally. Now, let's look down here about how we can pronounce it. Okay. Now, as you can see, the last letter is an N. This is a consonant. And the first letter of the next word is a vowel. It's O. So we want to link these two words together. We want to join them. Now, the easiest thing to do here is we are going to take the consonant, which is the N, and we'll move it to the next word. So it's going to be more like this. So I've moved the N over to the next word, and our pronunciation becomes turn off. So the N is linked with the vowel O, so it's noff, turn off. All right, so make sure we don't have a huge pause here between the R and the N, but it's turn off. All right, so we're linking the consonant and the vowel. All right, so that's how we always pronounce things. We're always going to link the consonant and the vowel together. So once you start doing this, your pronunciation, your speed becomes much faster. Okay, let's look at another example here. Now, sometimes our words, they end in an E, right? That's a vowel. But we don't worry about the letter, but we're more worried about the sound. Okay, so we're going to be linking the sound, not the letters. So another example would be right here. If we've got an E here and an A, right? We know that that's vowel, vowel, but the sound is actually the V. All right, so this V is going to be moved over to ha-va, ha-va. And then over here, you know, we're linking so many of these words. So bit-tav, bit-tav. And then don't forget, we've got this F here as well and the E. So bit-veg. Okay, so it looks kind of like this. Can I have a bit of egg? Can I have a bit of egg? So that's how we pronounce it. The spelling, of course, is normal, but we really want to join our consonant and our vowels. Makes our pronunciation much smoother. All right, so make sure you try that. Give it a try. It will really help you. But today, what our main lesson is going to be on is relative clauses. So basically, we're going to be focused on relative pronouns such as who, which, that. Okay, so what a relative clause does is it's going to help us join two sentences. Okay, it's going to help us join two sentences. So, for example, I've got here the letter that came this morning was from my mom. Now, this is joining two phrases. Maybe the original phrases were the letter came this morning. The letter came this morning. The second is the letter was from my mom. All right, so we've got two sentences here. We want to join these two sentences. We use a relative pronoun that. The letter that came this morning was from my mom. All right, so we can join two sentences, make it into one. The letter that came this morning was from my mom. All right, so that's what we're doing today. But what we have to remember is that sometimes we don't need to use the relative pronoun. Sometimes we can omit it. We don't need it. So let's look down here, leaving out the relative pronoun. Now, the main way that we make these sentences, and here's the pattern. The grammar pattern is right here. So whenever you make a sentence, it's going to be the main clause subject. We're going to use the relative pronoun. Then we've got a verb. Then you've got the rest of the relative clause, then another verb, and then the rest of the main clause. So we've got the woman, that, here's my relative pronoun. I've got my verb here, spoke during the meeting, and my next verb was the CEO, Now, this is a very typical way to use the relative clause, using relative pronoun that. Now, that, I like that because it's very useful. We can use that for people or things. If you wanted, we could change this to who. The woman who spoke during the meeting was the CEO. But I like that. It's very kind of like all purpose. We can use it anytime. All right. So now let's look at the second example. But before we look at the second example, I want to look just up here. This sentence here. It says you can usually tell when a relative project is the object of the clause because it is followed by another subject and verb. So this is just really fancy kind of grammar talk. Now, basically what this is saying, if we look down here, I've got that is in brackets. That means we don't need to use it. If you want to put it in, that's fine. But if you don't want to put it in, you don't have to. All right. So in this situation, why don't I need that? Okay. Because if you look at the next word, I've got a subject. It's not a verb. It's subject, which is Sarah, and then verb. Subject and verb. So if your main subject is followed by another subject verb, then we don't need this relative pronoun. It's your choice. You can omit it or you can include it. So the man that saw Sarah at the baseball game was her uncle. Okay, the man Sarah saw at the baseball game was her uncle. Completely same meaning. All right, so just be careful. Remember that if it's a subject and verb, then I don't need this word. But if you put it, it's completely fine. It's completely fine. So let's practice that. Let's practice, when do I need the relative pronoun? When do I not need the relative pronoun? So for example, we're going to look at the next exercise. If we look at this example right here, it says the meeting, and then I've got like this little asterisk mark, the star mark. Mark had to attend, went on for 3 hours. Now you have to decide, do I need a relative pronoun or do I not need a relative pronoun? If you need the relative pronoun, you're going to put it at this point where the asterisk is. If you don't need it, then we can just omit it. We can just leave it out. All right, so this one here, because we've got subject and verb, we don't need the pronoun. So the answer here, it says correct with no relative pronoun. The meeting Mark had to attend went on for 3 hours. Now, if you put it in, that's fine. The meeting that Mark had to attend went on for 3 hours. That's also fine, but we don't need it. Okay, so let's look here at number one. Number one, the man paid for the meal was a friend of Tom's. A friend of Tom's. So do we need the relative pronoun here, or do I not need it? Can I leave it out? If we need it, which one will you add? All right, please take a look at it and tell me your answer in the comment section. Okay, so this one here, if you notice, after this asterisk, the first word is a verb. It's a verb. There's no subject here. So in this situation, we do need to put a relative pronoun. we do need to put the relative pronoun. So I always like the relative pronoun that, right? So I would say the man that paid for the meal was a friend of Tom's. All right, the man that paid for the meal was a friend of Tom's. If you wanted, you could say who. The man who paid for the meal was a friend of Tom's. Who is also fine here. All right, next, let's look at number 2. I'll leave number 1 on the screen. Number 2 says, somewhere I've got a photo of the mountain, and then we either put a relative pronoun here or we don't. We climbed. Okay, so if you notice, we've got subject verb. Subject verb, that means it's not necessary. We don't need the relative pronoun. Somewhere I've got a photo of the mountain we climbed. If you wanted to say, if you wanted to add one, we could add that. We could add which. Somewhere I've got a photo of the mountain which we climbed. Somewhere I've got a photo of the mountain that we climbed. Both are okay, but you don't need it. So I'm going to put it in brackets. If you want, you could put these in, but it's not necessary. Okay, number 3. Number 3. I'll leave number 2 on the screen. Let's look at number 3. It says the man, and then we have to choose whether we add one or we don't. Repaired my car is a real expert. All right. If you notice, we've got a verb here. We've got a verb. That means that we need to put a relative pronoun here. All right. So what I would do here is it's very necessary to add a relative pronoun. The man that repaired my car is a real expert. If you wanted to use who, the man who repaired my car is a real expert. That is also okay. There are 2 options here. I like using that because it's just easy. It always works. Okay, let's make these a little bigger so it's easier to see. We're going to move on to number 4. Number 4. Number 4 says, I thought I recognized the assistant. Then we have to choose a relative pronoun or omit it, served us. All right, so here, if you notice, we've got a verb. Whenever we have a verb, we need to have a relative pronoun because the relative pronoun becomes the subject of that phrase. So here, again, I thought I recognized the assistant. If you wanted, it's fine to put who. That's okay. Again, but I like that. But you must use the relative pronoun. You must use it. All right. Now, remember, if you have any questions while we're doing this, just ask in the comment section. I'm moving a little bit fast here. I just want you to kind of understand when you need the relative pronoun and when you don't need it. All right, so here, number 5, it says, I'm afraid the numbers, and then we've got, I chose, didn't win a prize. Now, after the asterisks, after this, we've got subject and verb. Subject and verb. So that tells me I don't need it. So I can leave it out. Okay, so I can leave out that. I'm afraid the numbers that I chose didn't win a prize. Or, of course, if you wanted to say which, it's also okay. But again, I've put it into the brackets, means you don't need it. It's not necessary. I'm afraid the numbers which I chose didn't win a prize. Okay, let's keep moving. Number 6. The detective lost sight of the man. Then asterisk, he was following. He was following. So again, we've got a subject and a verb. Okay, so when we have a subject and a verb, it is the object. It's the object of the sentence. So we do not need the relative pronoun. So the detective lost sight of the man he was following. That's completely fine. You can leave it like that. Okay, but of course, it's possible to put it in if you want. Okay, we can say that. We can say who. The detective lost sight of the man who he was following, of the man that he was following, but you don't need it. The detective lost sight of the man he was following. Okay, that is completely fine. All right, so this exercise is just helping us to practice when do I need the relative pronoun, when do I not need it. And number 4 and 5 are great examples, because number 4, you can see we have a verb. So when you only have a verb, then we need the relative pronoun. But if I've got a number 5, I've got subject and verb, then I don't need it. I can include it. It's fine. It might be easier. If everybody just includes it, you don't make a mistake. But it is not necessary. Okay, so let's move on to the main part of this lesson. The main part of this lesson is going to be where you get to make sentences. I will give you 2 phrases. You're going to look at the phrases, read the phrases, join them using a relative pronoun. So you're going to be using that, who, which. Those would be your 3. That is probably the easiest one. So let's look down here. I've got these sentences. Number 1 is on the screen. It says, the book is on the table. I borrowed it from the library. We're going to join these 2 sentences. We're going to join these 2 sentences. Okay, so how do we join them? How do we join them? Okay, we can do I'll do the first one together with you. Okay, I'll do the first one together with you. So the book that I borrowed the book that I borrowed from the library is on the table. So I've joined it. Now, if you just notice, after my that, I've got that. If you notice, it's got a subject and verb. Subject and verb. So, in fact, I do not need this word. The book I borrowed from the library is on the table. The book I borrowed from the library is on the table. Okay, but again, if you want to put it in, that's fine. You know, I'll put it in brackets. That's fine. The book that I borrowed from the library is on the table. Good morning, Dio. How are you today? Okay, so we've got the first one as a great example, as I actually don't need this relative pronoun. I can just say the book I borrowed from the library is on the table. All right, now let's try number 2. Let's try number 2. I'll leave number 1 up on the screen for people who are still reading it and trying to figure it out. But if you've moved on, let's try number 2. The girl is my neighbor. She won the competition. The girl is my neighbor. She won the competition. Can you make a sentence where you join those two sentences? Can you make a sentence where you join those two sentences? All right, so we've got the girl is my neighbor. She won the competition. Let's join these. So for me, my sentence, if I were to join them, and I'm going to use a relative pronoun here, the girl who won the competition is my neighbor. The girl who won the competition is my neighbor. In this sentence, I need to have this relative pronoun who, because the next word is a verb. I need to have the who because this is a verb. The girl who won the competition is my neighbor. Okay, let's move on to number 3. Let's move on to number 3. We're going to join the sentences. The restaurant serves Italian food. It is very popular. Perfect. The girl who won the competition is my neighbor. Perfect. All right, number 3. The restaurant serves Italian food. It is very popular. How do we join these two? I'm going to leave number 2 on the screen for people who are still working on that. Anyone who's watching on the replay as well, please feel free to share your answers in the comment section. Also, if you're new to the live lessons, if you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe. Give me a thumbs up on this video and my other videos, and don't forget to hit that notification bell. The notification bell will let you know when I do my live lessons. All right, number 3, the restaurant serves Italian food. It is very popular. All right, so for me, I'll say the restaurant that is very popular, not what, it should be that, serves Italian food. The restaurant that is very popular serves Italian food. Okay, so after my relative pronoun, I have a verb, which is, so it is necessary to have that relative pronoun. All right, and the restaurant that is very popular serves Italian food. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, number 4. The movie was fantastic. We watched it last night. The movie was fantastic. We watched it last night. Let's join these two. And either you use a relative pronoun or you could omit the relative pronoun. It's your choice. But sometimes you need it. For example, number 3, we had to put that. All right, let's try number 4. The movie was fantastic. We watched it last night. I'll give everybody a couple of seconds. Okay, so almost perfect, almost perfect, almost perfect. You don't need the it. The it is the movie. So we've already said the movie, so we don't need to repeat it. So the movie we watched last night was fantastic. But great job, yo, in not including the relative pronoun. Here, we do not need a relative pronoun here because we've got subject and verb. Whenever we have subject and verb, I don't need to put anything here. If you want to, that's fine. Okay, I've said this throughout the lesson. If you want to say the movie that we watched last night was fantastic, that is possible. Right? You can do it if you want, but again, it's not necessary. The movie that we watched last night was fantastic. The movie we watched last night was fantastic. Remember now, this it here is talking about the movie, right? So I don't need to include the it. Okay, I don't need to include the it. Okay, let's do number 5. The car is very expensive. He wants to buy it. The car is very expensive. He wants to buy it. So number 5, let's join these two sentences using a relative pronoun, or maybe you don't need the relative pronoun. All right, so for me in this one here, we got to deal with an answer. The car that he wants to buy is very expensive. Yeah, perfect. Perfect. Okay. Now, if you don't want to add the relative pronoun here, you don't have to. The car he wants to buy is very expensive. All right, so I can put that here if I want. If you want, you don't need to put it here. Remember, it's your choice. It's optional. So we can include it or we don't have to include it. Video included it, which is fine. All right, let's do number 6. We'll go up to 10 and then we'll call it a lesson. Number 6, the artist is famous. She painted this picture. The artist is famous. She painted this picture. The artist is famous. She painted this picture. So how do I join these two together? So for me, my answer here is going to be the artist who painted this picture is famous. In this one, it is necessary. It is necessary to put who. I have to put that here because my next word is a verb. So who followed by a verb. Okay, it's necessary to put who. Now, if you look above, because I've got a subject here, then this is not necessary. It's your choice. So here, the artist who painted this picture. I think you just made a typo. It's not the she, but who. All right, let's look at number 7. The house is old. My grandparents used to live there. The house is old. My grandparents used to live there. This is probably the most difficult one so far. Number 7 is probably the most difficult one so far. How would we join these two here? Now, I'm going to use a new relative clause, a new relative pronoun. When I join it, it's going to be where. Where. All right, so the house where my grandparents used to live is old. Now, here, if we're following the rule, we don't need to put where here. The house my grandparents used to live is old. All right, so here we're going to use the relative pronoun where. Perfect. The house my grandparents used to live is old. Perfect, perfect. Okay, let's move on to number 8. Number 8 is the cat is very friendly. It lives next door. The cat is very friendly. It lives next door. How do we join these two? The cat is very friendly. It lives next door. So for me here, my answer would be the cat which lives next door is very friendly. The cat which lives next door is very friendly. Okay, we'll do a couple more, and I'll give one for homework as well, people who want to challenge themselves. I'm giving all the answers to you right now. So if you want to challenge yourself to make sure you are correct and build your confidence, you can do the homework I give you. So Dio has a question. When we use where, it's always for a place. Yes, where will always be used for a place. That is correct. Okay. Let's look at number 9. I'll keep number 8 on the screen just in case. The teacher is very strict. He teaches mathematics. Good question, Dio, by the way. Good question. So where is always used for a place. My lighting just fell. That's okay. Number 9. The teacher is very strict. He teaches mathematics. All right, so let's join those two together. The teacher who teaches mathematics. I'm going to shorten it, is very strict. The teacher who teaches math is very strict. Yo, perfect. All right, and let's look at number 10. This will be our last one, and then I'll give you guys some homework. Number 10 says, the city is beautiful. I grew up there. Okay, if we join, this is a good one too to end on. This is actually kind of a tricky one. My answer for this, the city where I grew up is beautiful. Now, if you want to omit it, if you want to admit this, you don't, because we've got the subject and verb. If you want to omit it, that's fine. But we do need to add a preposition then. The city I grew up in is beautiful. Correct the spelling here. The city I grew up in is beautiful. Whenever we have where and you omit it, then please add the preposition. Okay, yo, perfect. The city where I grew up is beautiful. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Okay, so just one more note to remember there. If I do omit the where, then please add the preposition in here. Okay, the city where I grew up is beautiful. The city I grew up in is beautiful. Okay, so number 11 and number 12 are for homework. Number 11 and number 12 are for homework. The dog barked loudly. It woke us up. The cake was delicious. She baked it for my birthday. Okay. Please join these sentences using a relative pronoun. And remember, if you don't need the relative pronoun, you do not need it. So Leo has a, if it's a formal situation like a business situation, is it okay not to yeah, completely fine. Completely fine not to use a relative clause. In any situation, business, formal, it's completely fine. Okay, so number 11, number 12 are for homework. Please join these sentences using a relative pronoun. If you don't need the relative pronoun, you can omit it. It's your choice. All right, and if you have any questions about today's lesson is really useful. It's how we reduce things. We're going to omit relative pronouns. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comment section. Hopefully I'll be back to my regular live schedule next week. I'll put a schedule on my community board later today to let you know. All right, guys. Thank you all for joining. Thanks for watching today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was useful. Hope it helps you speak more fluently. All right. Until the next lesson. See ya.